Hey folks, hope you're all doing well today. Today's topic is kind of near and dear to my heart. It's Is higher ed worth it? A little bit about my background in this. I was raised with the idea that, hey, you're going to go to college when you grow up. I went to elementary school, junior high school, and high school kind of in the same town. And for the most part, I was not your sterling high school student. In fact, kind of like Joe Walsh, I'm kind of surprised that they let me out. I certainly didn't have the greatest grades. I was the person that they would say, he has a lot of potential if only he would apply himself. I did relatively well on my ACT and SATs for some reason that I do not understand because I did not study for them. But my grades were rough. Never failed anything in high school. I got that going for me. I went to a community college because it was the only place I could get into. Actually, it was a really great experience. It was kind of a commuter type school, mostly working adults going there, military folks, things like that. So people older than me, it definitely wasn't like a party zone. There were no fraternities, there were no sororities, there was nothing like that. They had a couple trailers that served as the student rec center. You could go get a cup of coffee. A lot of cinder block buildings. I got the job done. A lot of great teachers though, and I learned a ton. Dedicated folks and several folks that I can remember what they look like and some of the impacts that they had on me as a student. That cost $20,000 for the entire degree. My parents had saved that much money. They paid it off. I was working full time during the entire time I was in college. Because it was family business, it could be like, hey, this semester I have 2 morning classes and a night class. So my schedule would be what I could do around that, and did a lot of weekend work too. So I could take stuff with me and do my homework and whatever. In my 30s, I decided to get a master's degree, and I really wasn't sure what I was going to do, what kind of master's degree I wanted. I just thought I need to do something. I was kind of in a rut. I got a master's degree in international relations ultimately. My grandfather, who had paid for some of the other grandchildren's colleges in various ways, said that he would split it with me. And so I paid for half of it, he paid for the other half. I believe that cost something in the range of $25,000 to $30,000 altogether. We're seeing inflation here because obviously a 4-year undergraduate degree has a lot more credits. Better place, better university for the master's than the community college. However, it was not overwhelming for me to be able to contribute my half of that, and so it kind of worked out. Then, some years later, I pursued a PhD and I was funded. What that means is I received a tuition waiver and a stipend from the program that I went to, and that covered all of the expenses. I worked full-time the entire time I've pursued all of these degrees in one capacity or another. Sometimes I kind of wish I had, but that was the way it was. I had to support my family, and so therefore I figured out a way that I could do the degrees without impacting my family to a great degree. Some privilege involved in that too. Very fortunate to have had a background which allowed me to get to that sort of place. What do I think about higher ed in general? I'm a big fan. Study after study after study after study, no matter where you really find them, folks that get a college degree tend to make more money than people who don't. The creation of generational wealth, which is a real struggle in this country, for a lot of folks, really relies on this. Now, whether or not you're a big fan of capitalism or not, that is the reality of the system that we live in. Folks that get graduate degrees tend to make a little bit more than that baseline undergraduate number. Areas around universities and colleges see positive and substantial economic impacts. Many studies have shown this. That has, that's employment, that's tax revenues, that's all sorts of things. Higher ed institutions also have a soft power and have a mostly positive influence locally, regionally, nationally, and even internationally. I mean, thinking regionally, you think of the sports teams that a college might have that create awareness of that school. There are often in many universities do social justice outreach or development projects in the communities around them, or even do like service learning trips to various places. Medical students going to Dominican Republic, for instance, as a whole, in a sort of synergistic, holistic, yet difficult to measure way. There's innovation happening, there's invention happening, there's knowledge creation happening, and skilled labor is being generated from that work. There's also a lot of other things that come from that I'll talk about here in a minute. That said, those are all generalities about what higher ed does. In a specific sense, for individuals, a very direct ROI is almost impossible to quantify because it doesn't have an immediate effect in a lot of cases. Just the mere fact that you go get a four-year degree does not mean that you're going to walk off that stage and go get a higher paying job. Also, those kind of effects accumulate over time of I've been trained in a particular way of thinking and reasoning and writing and doing things, which gives me an upward trajectory potentially to achieve greater positions moving forward. It enables, in many cases, people to kind of get a system that allows them to act in particular ways, which allow them to move up in various capacities. That could be in the military, that could be in business, it could be in nonprofit world, all kinds of places like that. It's really hard to quantify that effect. I'll just say this. I was working full-time in a small business before, during, and after I got my four-year college undergraduate degree. If I hadn't gotten it, I would have done the exact same thing and I wouldn't have made any more money as a result of that. Now, did that degree and the reasoning and technical things that I learned during that time enable me to be able to generate ideas that made money for that company, which then allowed me to have greater salaries later? I would argue that it did. But can you prove that? No, you absolutely cannot. Did it ultimately lead me to pursue a master's degree and to have a bunch of other opportunities and so forth and so on, and ultimately end up as an academic and making a fair living at that? How could you predict that? I certainly couldn't have. Really, quite frankly, if you'd come to me in 2005 and said, hey, Jim, in 2024, this is what you're going to be doing. This is what your life's going to look like. I would have laughed in your face. I would have had absolutely no conception that I could do any of those things. Just none. So my path is probably not that path that the typical American hero type achieves of, I had a plan, I set out to do it, I walked up these steps and I conquered this thing and I got just exactly what I wanted. That's not my story. Not at all. Now, if you go get a master's degree, in all likelihood, you're going to have a purpose for that. And perhaps even wherever you work has some sort of incentive or requirement for upper level types of positions as a result of getting that grad degree. In my case, I just wanted to go do it. So I did. I had kind of some goals, but nothing that firm. And certainly no financial promise of financial reward sitting there out there for me upon completion. But in general, grad degrees do tend to result in quicker turnaround in terms of making more money, but it can be field dependent. You know, if you're going to go out and get a master's degree in philosophy because you feel like it, I'm sure that intellectually it will enhance your life. Some of the other things that emerge from both undergraduate and graduate degrees are intangible, but I would argue are valuable in a personal way and also in a societal sense. Critical thinking, creativity, arts, these things are intangible effects that create a broader sense of the world in my way of thinking. As far as individuals go, the exposure to different ideas, techniques, histories, religions, science, as well as peoples that are different from us, and the fact that we may go to school with people that are quite different than us, can cue us into multiple frames of reference. And what do I mean by that? That means that I can look at a situation and consider the perspectives of different folks within it and have some knowledge and training that allows me to see those not in the emotional or gestalt sense of a human being, but as people who are like myself but different, contexts that have similarities yet have differences, and to respect those and to have some sort of objectivity to think about the complexity, that development of multiple frames of reference. It provided me with the opportunity to learn about humility, to learn about empathy. I'm not certainly going to claim that I'm a humble, empathetic person all the time, because I'm not. But it gives me that opportunity to have that as a potential outcome. Also, right here, I'm going to say, don't talk to me about indoctrination. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. I'm sorry. If I could get my students to turn in their stuff on time and to follow the instructions, I would love to indoctrinate them in that. While universities and colleges have particular faculty who have particular ideological bents, universities tend to have somewhat more liberal people than the average population. I have also met faculty who were quite conservative or far more conservative. Those kinds of exposures to different kinds of folks, I think, is valuable. And I'll say this, some of the best professors I've ever had, I never knew what their perspective was as far as politics goes. I took a class from one guy and I'd walk out of there and be like, I think he's a communist. I really do. And then the next time you'd think, I think this guy wants to bring the monarchy back. You just really wouldn't know. And that was really valuable, I think, to be able to step back from that. I've also had plenty of professors who were very clear about their politics, but able to step back from that and teach you what you needed to know. I don't buy indoctrination, and I never will, and nothing that anybody ever says would get me to do it. If you really want to go to some place that's like a really uber conservative place or an uber liberal place, Google it and you can find a college for you. Advanced degrees can provide advanced skill sets in STEM and critical thinking skills, which are valuable to employers, and also valuable in that, if I'm just sitting around watching TV all the time, that would be really boring. But I don't have to do that. I can have a variety of interests and learn about things and talk to people and be involved in my community. And a lot of that came from being in a variety of college programs and having those opportunities presented. In those ways, higher ed can create, I would argue, better and more effective citizens. Individuals capable of critical thinking, skepticism, creativity, empathy, while simultaneously being efficient workers and productive people in our capitalist society. Again, whether or not you agree with capitalism or not, it is what we live in. To kind of conclude with our final look at this, is it worth it? I would say higher education is worth it most of the time, but it's expensive for a variety of reasons, and growing more so. Consider, is it worth it for you? Incidentally, step back, trade school is higher ed too. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with going to a trade school. You can learn a ton of stuff there that I have a ton of respect for that. And it's incredibly valuable and simultaneously financially viable for the folks that pursue it. Consider whether it's for you. Do you have a goal in mind for your undergraduate degree? Geez, when I was 17, did I know what I wanted to do with my life? I kind of thought I did, but I was going to be an art major. That didn't quite pan out that way, and I completely changed my mind by the end of it. I think that given the cost that I had to suffer through at the time, which was zero, but now it's a different story. consider whether it's worth it for you and what is your goal. Why do you want to pursue it? Is it just, well, everybody else is, and it's the college experience and all of those things. And those parents who might be watching, oh, well, I really want to get my kids out of the house and teach them to be more independent, or give them that opportunity to be more independent, so they should go to college. Maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't. Those are, of course, your own decisions, but it would be somewhat better to think about, what are you going to do with this? What are you going for? And that just doesn't mean, hey, I'm going to enroll and go get a business degree. Maybe that's your jam. Maybe you want to get an art degree. Maybe you're passionate about that and you really have some ideas and thoughts about how to learn how to do that professionally. Maybe you want to get a music degree, all sorts of potential things, English degrees. What do you want to do? Know that, or have at least some potentials. What it costs, shop around. Back in my day, you really didn't have the possibilities that folks do now. And this especially goes for graduate degrees. Look around, see what they are, see what their reputations are, see what the quality is, and then find out how much it costs. And if you can't readily figure that out, or if you ask somebody and they send you a bunch of gobbledygook and they really can't explain it, really be wary of that. Avoid debt if you possibly can. Student loan debt, which is another subject that I'm going to do a video about later, particularly about my experiences with it. Avoid that student loan debt if at all possible, especially for graduate degrees, which are more expensive. Or if you do need to go into debt, have a calculated risk that when you complete that degree, you are relatively certain that you're going to make enough extra income to cover that. Because I'll tell you what, student loan debt is killer, and it is a tremendous drain on people's financial resources in this country. Very troubling in many ways. So be wary of student loan debt. Be aware of the costs of the programs that you're considering attending. Look for those opportunities for scholarships, funding of various kinds. Can you do work study type things, that kind of stuff? My daughter did a lot of work study when she was in her undergraduate, which saved a good chunk of money for her. I think I have kind of reached the end of this diatribe about these things, but in general, it's worth it, but reason through it. Talk to some people you trust and know. Think through it, have a goal, talk with some other people about it before you do it, and really think about that financial side of it. Likes, comments, shares, and subscribes are, of course, encouraged and welcome. And I look forward to seeing you again on the next one. I appreciate you all spending time with me, watching me ramble about things, and hope you all have a great week. Thanks.